conclusion at this point. If Mueller was the consummate pro that everyone said he was, he would have used today to apologize to the American people and this president for what ultimately was a travesty. We'll never know the full extent of how much this has hobbled the presidency of Donald Trump. But I have to say this, even with this albatross around his neck, the president has once again beaten the elites at their own game. He's delivered economic success that's the envy of the world. Better try harder next time, guys. And that's the angle. All right, joining me now, two people who worked on the independent counsel of Ken Starr and Saul Weisenberg, of course. They're both Fox News contributors. And joining me, Kevin Brock, who was appointed Assistant FBI Director for Intelligence by Mueller, and House Freedom Caucus Chair Mark Meadows. All right, Ken, what was Mueller's biggest, for lack of a better word, screw-up today?
A total lack of preparation, or at least the inability, for whatever reason, to communicate, to show mastery or really basic knowledge of the report. So I was stunned, and then I was shocked by Bob's inability to focus, to show that he understood the questions, the constant please repeat the question. Sometimes you do that as a witness to stall and gather your thoughts, but it seemed to be genuine. What was that question? So he was in a state of befuddlement, which became, I think, embarrassing. And then I would just say, early on, I was so glad to see that the issue of exoneration, the idea of a prosecutor taking it on himself, or now we know the team taking it on themselves, the Mueller team, to say this report does not exonerate the president. And we've been saying this for several months now. Totally inappropriate, totally improper. And now we know, Laura, that is much more likely than not something that Bob Mueller did not, in his judgment, come to. It was the judgment of the Mueller team.
Yeah, Mark Meadows, I'm going to go to you. Now, off to Ken's point, we're going to move to this because he was asked about who appointed him at this hearing. And for those of you who missed this, watch.
Which president appointed you to become the United States Attorney for Massachusetts?
Which senator?
Which president?
Oh, which president? I think that was President Bush.
According to my notes, it was President Ronald Reagan had the honor to do so. Under whose
My
administration?
mistake.
Congressman, I mean, look, the president's been through hell. His family's been through hell. Yeah. Carter Page, all these people that we don't talk about every night had to hire lawyers. They had to go through all this testimony. They were vilified, called treasonous. And everyone built him up to be this guy, and we cut my soundbite down, but who walked on water.
Right.
I didn't buy it from the beginning. Anytime the elites build up someone to this demigod status, my antenna always go up. I'm sorry. Maybe the nicest guy in the world. This was a sham from the beginning. He was not with it. And he's running this investigation that could affect U.S. geopolitics?
Right. I was right there next to Bob Mueller for the entire judiciary hearing, and it was obvious that he was not prepared and that he didn't have a grasp of the
basic facts of this investigation.
You're exactly right. I mean,
you know more about the investigation. This whole panel knows more about this investigation than Bob Mueller does. Well, after today, that's what we think.
It was very alarming, and that was meant to be a softball question by a Democrat, and it was a swing and a miss, and it was just a sad day.
You worked with him?
I did.
You know him. I assume you think he's a man of great integrity. Your view?
I do, indeed, but I got a lot of text messages and tweets from colleagues, and the operative word of the day seems to be painful. It's not the Bob Mueller we remember, but we all, those of us with white hair, we lose a little bit of verbal dexterity over the years, but I think his basic unfamiliarity with the report itself, having to pull along his deputy for backup, does not inspire confidence, and his answers today did not inspire confidence that he was in command and control.
The deputies seem like caretakers. Okay, I'm going to say it, and people say, oh, you're so... No, this is the U.S. presidency involved. Right. We were led to believe that this was going to be the best of the best, the fairest of the fairest, and it wasn't. It wasn't. Saul, you have been a big defender of Mueller from the beginning. You've never worked with him, but after today, your thoughts?
Well, I've been a big defender of his integrity from the beginning, and I still am a defender of his integrity.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Go ahead.
I'm not going to kick him when he's down. Like Kevin, I got text messages from people out of the blue, people I haven't talked to ex-FBI in years, saying literally, this is not the Bob Mueller that I knew. Something is wrong. I don't know when that started. I do know that, to me, the failure today is a failure of the Democrats. This man said, the report speaks for itself. I don't want to say anything beyond what's in the report. And I think if he had been much sharper than he was today, he still would not have given them what they want to hear. And when you do not give them what they want to hear, they destroy you, as they have been doing all day, and they are doing tonight, because they are merciless.
Ken, I had a piece of advice I offered on Twitter today. I kind of held my fire till near the end of the testimony, but my advice was, okay, committee, when you want a really big hearing and a lawyer that you're going to call really doesn't want to testify, that you think is going to make your points, don't bring him to testify. He said he didn't want to testify, and I think maybe he knew he didn't know the underlying facts. We're going to get to some of these facts, like the Steele dossier, in a moment. But he said he didn't want to testify, and Barr said, basically in that letter, stick to the report. He wandered off a few times when he wanted to, when the Democrats asked him some questions, but the Republicans, it was like, shut down, not going to answer that question. But he never wanted to do this testimony, Ken.
From what we know, this was just an enormous misjudgment, because now that we look back, 2020 hindsight, we now see some of the warning signs. His press conference, where he said no questions. You know, I think it's fundamental to a democratic society that people who hold power, as he did at that time, have to be responsive, not just to the Congress of the United States, but to the media. So prosecutors have to be careful about what they say, but he had issued his report. So it was time to answer questions, including the questions that have been raised about the integrity, not of Bob Mueller, but of his team, and especially the political leanings. All that had been in the public domain, but he had never responded to these, I think, very reasonable, in fact, powerful questions. But he said, I'm not going to respond. So I think that was a telltale indicator, a harbinger then of what we saw today.
All right, Congressman Meadows, I want to play this exchange about the Steele dossier. This is what got the whole investigation going. For everybody who's lived under a rock, it was this dossier, through Fusion GPS, compiled with supposed sources, the highest levels of the Russian government, all a bunch of phony baloney stuff, paid for ultimately by the Clinton campaign. This was the exchange about the Steele dossier.
When did you become aware that the unverified Steele dossier was included in the FISA application to spy on Carter Page?
I'm not going to speak to that.
Your team interviewed Christopher Steele, is that correct?
Not going to get into that.
You can't tell this committee as to whether or not you interviewed Christopher Steele in a 22-month investigation with 18 lawyers.
As I said at the outset, that is one of the investigations that is being handled by others in the Department of Justice.
You know, it was really that moment and one moment before when he said he didn't know what Fusion GPS was all about. When you looked at both of those, you know, you've been covering this. Obviously, it's not just you that's been covering it. It's been all over for 2 years. Adam Schiff's talked about it. Devin Nunes has talked about it. And yet here we are with Bob Mueller not being able to answer just the basic questions of the genesis of this entire investigation. and I think, you know, you hit an earlier point here. You know, the Democrats forced Bob Mueller to do this. It was first that they wanted to wait for the Mueller report, and they got the Mueller report, and then they wanted him to come back, and they wanted him to do a press conference, and then they wanted him to show up. 3 times they've struck out. Now, they're not going to stop here. They're going to get Don McGahn. They're going to try to continue.
They couldn't even pronounce his name today.
They need to stop why they're behind. I mean, right now, they are so behind, they need to just stop, close the book.
They don't care about what's good for the country. Yeah. And Kevin, this was what Andrea Mitchell said about the line of inquiry about the Steele dossier.
It's shameful that Republicans were so focused on trying to undermine the origins of the investigation that they did not deal with the fact that has been concluded by all of the intelligence agencies under Obama.